Trudy, do we have any ice?
You son of a bitch.
Anyway, sometime in the summer of 48, no, 1932. No, 1939.
But when I say I want the moon, I expect the moon.
Because he was caught with chewing gum on his pubis.
World handed to us on a plate, and then you swing in on a chandelier, drop your pants, and crap on it.
You're a very, very gifted storyteller.
I killed my CO.
You have lost your mind!
Where the hell are you supposed to be?
Because Scouts honor.
This is my business. I mean business!
Hello and welcome to Blowing Smoke, the officially unofficial Mad Men podcast, where we dive into each and every episode of one of the very greatest pieces of televisual storytelling ever. So sit back, relax, and smoke 'em if you got 'em, because this right here is the Cure for the Common podcast. We're your co-hosts, Kyle and Levi Huffman. I'm Kyle.
I'm Levi.
And here we are back after a little bit of a break. It's been a busy few weeks for us. I'm sure it has been for you as well on the other end of this. This episode is, of course, about season 10. Season 10. Imagine if Mad Men made it to 10 seasons. Like the mid-70s.
Right, it would be like, oh my gosh, it's so hot in this city. Let's go see Dog Day Afternoon. Like, that'd be the...
And then you got like...
the gas crisis.
And then there's like this awkward subplot
Harry
about...
Crane's got gas. It's like,
of like Pete makes a trip back to New York and sees like a college-age Sally Draper in a disco. Like, it would have been a lot of stuff going on
like,
there.
And he's maybe attracted to her, and he's like, how do I feel about that?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Of course.
And Trudy's like, you have lost your mind.
Season 1, Episode 10, Long Weekend. Which, as we said last time, we're kind of getting into like...
We're kind of recording this on a long weekend.
Yeah. That's true. Kind of a 2-episode, like, a little bit of a,
Yeah.
I'd say like some of the lulls of the season before like the action-packed final 2 episodes, which are really big.
I think the next
season.
episode in particular is of Indian Summer, episode 11, not to be confused with Rich Summer, is a little bit...
Rich Little, yeah.
Huh?
Or Rich Little.
Who's that?
He was a comedian.
Never heard of him. I was talking about one of the actors on the show.
Yeah,
Rich Little.
Impressionist, yeah.
Well, I do
around.
better impressions than him, I bet. I'm a little bit of an impressionist.
Gotta say.
I must say.
He is quite good.
Like, who, Rich Little? Or
no, you. I've heard of him before. To be honest, I can't even remember off the top of my head things I've seen from him.
But I could do a RFK Jr. impression, but I'd rather not. Maybe we'll save that for later. I'm sorry, that was Eunice Kennedy.
Speaking of Kennedys.
Kennedy. But yeah, I think the next episode is a little bit like it's setting up the last 2, so it's kind of like a buffer. This one's like important, but also like, will Roger die? Didn't you think it was funny that wasn't at all brought up in the Carousel review, by the way?
Yeah.
He focused on all the thematics of the episode, which are, there's a
I
lot
wonder
of.
if that was just subconsciously because it's like, well, he's a main character throughout the whole show. I'm not even going to spend time.
It just seems like that's
this.
the big thing about this episode that everybody talks about. So maybe that's another reason he felt like, whatever.
We do get a big character introduction in this one that he's not in it much until season 3 again, so we'll talk about him probably more in season 3 with
who
Gene Hofstadt, who's Betty's father.
Oh, yeah, I forgot he was in
his official introduction into the show.
Okay.
But again, he's more of a character recurring in season 3 when he kind of comes to live with him for a little while.
Yeah.
So, Long Weekend.
And by the way, this was premiered on your birthday of 2007.
15th.
It had 0.61 on the rating scale of 600,000. I think that might have been the low of the season, possibly. Yes. So this was the lowest watched of this season.
Just to run through, this is the IMDb description here. It's Labor Day weekend, and most of the men are sending their wives away for a few days. Don Draper's wife, Betty, is dreading the thought, and as her father and his new girlfriend, whom she detests, will be staying with them. With the election approaching, the steamship called SS Sterling Cooper is gloomy since the Nixon campaign has not been following their advice. Roger Sterling was hoping to spend Friday night with Joan Holloway, but having just seen the movie The Apartment, she's feeling a bit used. She plans a night out on the town with her old college friend who has some surprising information for her. Don and Roger invite twin sisters from a casting call to join them for a drink, but things go badly for Roger, who suffers a serious heart attack. After the incident, Don ends by spending the night with Rachel Menken, where he reveals a lot of his inner self.
Is there anything such as an unserious heart attack?
It's just for kicks.
It's that little
it's a
fun
gag
heart attack.
It's kind of a gag heart attack.
Yeah.
You know.
Anyway,
by the way, the episode was directed by Tim Hunter, written by Bridget Bedard, the Jack Minton marriage
collective
couple. What do you want to say? And then Weiner himself.
Yeah.
Apparently credited by.
Yeah, a lot happens in this episode, actually, more than I had remembered. Obviously, the apartment being such a big... It's funny how this show sometimes hits these big cultural touchstones of movies, and sometimes it mentions it, and sometimes it makes a big deal out of it. Like, obviously, when we get to Rosemary's Baby or Planet of the Apes, it feels like it's a bigger deal is made about
those movies.
Of course, it's never like to the level of Bobby Cannavale going to see Enter the Dragon in vinyl and like high, like doing the karate in the below
theater,
yeah. I mean, like it's never that level. And of course, it shows Don going to the movies a lot, and even Peggy going to see The Naked Prey or whatever. Like, obviously, there's a lot of times where movies come up in this. I feel like what's interesting though is that obviously what a big inspiration The Apartment was, but also how that literally almost breaks the fourth wall of the show in this very organic way of saying a character sees that and goes, huh, that's kind of about me. And I don't like the way this person was treated, so I'm going to kind of not fall into that right now.
And Sipes, he brought up that idea in his recap where he was talking about that this was kind of the first time the show became a little meta in that way, where the characters are watching the movie and feeling as though it's a representative of their own life. And I don't want to spoil too much about this. We're going to probably have more in-depth discussions about The Apartment on a future episode of this pod, so I don't want to go too much into talking about that movie in particular. But I remember as I was getting into movies and film, that eventually became one of those movies. Oh, this is this great older movie you should watch, and it was some years.
It's pretty modern too. I mean,
yes,
in a lot of ways.
I definitely watched this show before I saw that movie, and I remember that it was a little bit of a plot point in this show, and then watching it and the way office life is depicted, going, oh wow, this actually bears a lot of resemblance to Mad Men, where I realized that it was indeed a pretty big influence on Mad Men. And that movie has, I would say, a lot more of an optimistic resolution and ending than this show does about obviously this world.
Because
but also you can tell Weiner took it as inspiration in a roundabout way.
Because in that there's no Jack Lemmon characters in this show in the sense of one of them with a heart of gold. All of them are horn dog idiots. Like
Peggy's the closest, and that she's a woman.
Yeah, but I'm saying she's almost as a male figure.
Like
but yes.
Jack Lemmon, if was played by Shirley MacLaine, right. You know what I mean? Because the Shirley MacLaine character is kind of a little bit more of a Joan in The Office itself, so it's not quite a one-to-one.
But so it's right. There's not that kind of role in the show as there is in this to say, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of bad.
And Sites didn't say this. Would you agree that it really doesn't feel like Weiner and the way The Apartment's being used in this show is like saying The Apartment didn't get this world right, and I'm lording it over that movie, even if obviously that was at that time cutting edge contemporary look at office life, and so that in and of itself made it more authentic than some other things being made. And it's made by Billy Wilder, who's one of the great writer directors, especially in Hollywood history, who was known for making things that some of his movies are outright cynical. Like you watch Ace in the Hole, and like that is a very cynical movie about this. I mean, Apartment is something that's much more like, I would say it's
comedic.
It's comedic. It's dramatic. It's one of the perfect comedy dramas, romantic comedy dramas of any era.
Sunset Boulevard's pretty cynical.
Oh, that's
totally
outright.
cynical.
Yeah, and then Double Indemnity
to the point of being a parody.
Double Indemnity, of course, is. That's a noir, obviously.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. Is I was thinking about this movie and thinking about what the plot is, which is about, hey, let's use your apartment to have affairs in, literally, and how there's literally a character who's a doctor who's like, man, you're a study in tip-top shape male anatomy, because it's assuming he's having sex with all these women. And it's like, to even talk about that in 1960 in a movie, and that be like a joke, is a pretty big deal. And it's not really that big a one now, but I mean, that's pretty much on the level of having a toilet in the movie in Psycho. Like that level of like, oh wow, we're really getting to this point where, and Psycho gets mentioned in this, is it in this episode or is it later on? It gets mentioned at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe that's,
I wrote, by the way, this would be a chance to mention, I wrote a whole paper in college about the Hitchcockian elements in Mad Men, specifically as a TV show, but most especially in like Signal 30 and some stuff in
Mystery
season
Date.
5. Yeah. No, it actually was mostly Mystery Date now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah. But anyway.
Because that episode's straight up kind of a horror episode in a lot of random ways. Literally, even the name is like,
well, speaking of Psycho, like, Marion Crane's whole like, I'm kind of embezzling money from my company and all that whole like first third of that movie almost feels like it could be a Mad Men plot, like a little bit.
Price as a woman, not British.
Yeah, I mean, change some elements,
not his account.
Yeah,
his account. But yeah, I think that's all just to say that I think Weiner, for the most part, does really well about organically infusing
pop culture.
I think he does it less well as the show goes on. Like towards the end of the show, I remember there's the part where Dawn and Megan break up finally over the phone, and he's like, "Oh, the Wild Bunch, I want to see that." Stuff like that feels very obviously like the Wild Bunch,
right?
This movie, that movie, that gets to a point where it's like, okay, maybe we could do a little better than that, but for the most part, he does really well about it, especially with books. I found to be even more successful for the most part.
Well, I think
because sometimes you can just show that visually. You don't have to have it like.
And in a few episodes, we'll talk about the actual Kennedy and Nixon election. I think, like, going beyond even just pop culture signifiers, but like major events depicted on the show. I think the show did a really great job with that. As far as like the Kennedy assassination later on, the Cuban Missile Crisis in a subtler way in season 2. I think out of all of those, and I know that there had to be a lot of pressure. How are you going to do the moon landing? How are you going to do the moon landing? I think that's, for me personally, my favorite.
That's a good
one. Of
one.
it taking the real world, going on and implementing it into the plot of the show. I think that was probably the most successful.
One of the details I think
that.
about most from this show is when it happens and Harry stands up and then you hear people in the next room like clapping and screaming. It's just like little stuff like that like you've got to think about the way that would have been to have like lived through. I mean, I think that and speaking back again to going back to the literary thing, because it's something I was just thinking about, and you know more about this than me, but I've seen the Last Picture Show movie, which is totally great. Totally love.
Amazing book.
And I know you've always spoken really highly of it. Do you think the book or the movie's better? I know that's kind of a hard question because I know you like both, but
that's hard.
I have a hint. And I'm unqualified to answer this question.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm unqualified to answer this question, but one of them has a Ben Johnson performance and one of them doesn't.
I was literally about to say, if you're like arguing for and against either one, the thing about the movie is, I was literally thinking it has a Ben Johnson performance, and he's like suddenly one of the best character actors of his era, but most especially in that movie is just kind of the absolute perfect person at the perfect time to do that. I still need to read a lot of his stuff. Everything I've ever read, movies or books by Larry McMurtry, is just absolute dynamite. I'm like, this guy was one of the best writers period.
He was kind of a screenwriter too on certain.
Oh yeah,
things,
that's what I
so,
mean. Like he sometimes even adapted his own stuff, and then even like things that were adapted from his books, like something like terms of endearment. I think he might have written
rules of engagement.
Was him or James L. Brooks wrote the screenplay for that? I'm going to look that up. Like,
he probably worked a lot on it, even if I don't know.
Hold on a second, I'll tell you. James L. Brooks wrote the screenplay of his novel, McMurtry's novel.
But yeah. Anyway, I like how that book.
And then also Cloris Leachman's really amazing in that movie.
Yeah.
Last Picture Show.
Yes. But anyway, so what was your opinion? What do you think's better? Before I say what I was going to say, because I forgot.
I'm going to say, this is random, I'm going to say the book. The book. Almost just purely because a few years later, and it's, bear with me on this.
Yeah.
American Graffiti came out as a movie and was kind of sort of about a similar-ish set of ideas. Obviously, like, the Texas of Last Picture Show is a lot more sparse than the world of Modesto in American Graffiti.
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like as cinematically, as far as the cinematic lineage of those movies, like, American Graffiti was just ever so slightly better, and like took that into some other more dynamic directions.
And it's just as dark and cynical in its own way, while also being a celebration of the time period.
Yeah, I don't know. I love, and that book, I think, does a really great job of like depicting the sparseness of that world, and the movie does too.
Yeah.
That's a really tough question because that's honestly among the closest. The book is really great, and the movie is also really great.
It's a pretty direct adaptation.
Yes,
I'm guessing.
I mean, it changes some things over there, but it's actually pretty close. So that's tough. I think barely I would say the book, but the movie is also.
But to get
amazing.
back to. Yeah, I was just curious because I never talked to you about that. In the show in season 6 when that's used, when he has oh gosh, what's her name? The lady that's his neighbor,
Mrs. Rosen.
Mrs. Rosen. Well, yeah, Rosen. Comforting Mrs. Rosen.
That's an Urban Dictionary.
It is,
by the way. Sylvia
Rosen.
Played by Linda Cardellini.
That's why I was trying to think of her name, Linda Cardellini, yeah. And he's like, makes her stay in a hotel room, and all she has is that book to read. And then he even takes it from her and starts kind of reading it on the plane that he's flying with Ted Shaw somewhere. And, like, I don't know, just knowing what that story is about, I feel like randomly seems unapplicable to the situation of a woman trapped in a hotel room in New York City and not being able to leave.
Yeah.
But also I feel like is about a sort of emotional sparseness that I don't know. I find that to be randomly profound in certain ways.
I don't know. In a story like the archetypal story like what the Last Picture Show is going for, almost inherently is more suited for the page than cinema sometimes. Like, it just not, I don't know, like, because you really reflect on the loneliness because you are literally sitting alone with that book and reading it. There's something that happens there. Yeah. By the way, on the Mad Men Season 6 Wikipedia page...
The lost commentary?
Well, it says all this stuff, and it says, the 6th season was released on DVD and Blu-ray in Region 1 on November 5th, 2013. So it tells us the specific
Region
day.
1, though.
It's just like, why?
The other regions, they came later. Maybe that's what the problem was, is that they didn't release them all in the same region and the audio commentaries got lost.
You think about like what's going on in season 6 of this show, how far away that feels like from where we're at right now in terms of literally where the characters are, like,
Yeah.
Ways to go.
But anyway, back to the long weekend. They lose the Dr. Scholl's account. I mean, literally, it's like, imagine like those old cartoons of like Panic of 1873, like men wearing barrels and top hats, like we're in dire straits for Sterling Cooper, right? Mm-hmm. It's all over because they lost Dr. Scholl's. I think it's kind of hilarious what a big deal they make about it, though, in its own way, is that they'd lose that. It's like, I mean, Dr. Scholl's is pretty big, but I guess that's also just a reminder, kind of in this part of the show especially, of how this is still a pretty little boutique, like ad agency, not up there with McCann and BBDO and.
Well, we got the taste in the last episode was shoot about if you came to work for this agency, you could get coke. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that. There's definitely this
and
agency's not on par with.
We talked about it at the time, but when you had McCann in his office, or what's his name? Not McCann. His name's not McCann, but the guy
Jim Hobart.
Jim Hobart.
Yeah.
Duh, that's in his office, and there's all these people. And like we said, it's kind of funny. It's like busyness.
Yeah.
Like, but I mean, you do see
and then he
how
had
it's
a good
like
leave us moment.
Yeah.
I remember he's talking on the phone
Right.
with Don.
But yeah, that like that's what I'm saying. It's like it works.
I'd love to be
though,
a
in the
regional
sense
manager
of,
at like a Dairy Queen and,
and be like, leave us.
Yeah, it's like I mean,
regional
it's
manager to Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those that's like a little. You can't even go inside. It's like a.
Yeah.
Like there, you can't even enter, and you're like, leave us. And it's like, where do you want me to
one
go?
plastic
It's so
partition
small.
that's like
Right.
between
Paper even. I don't know. But yeah, overall, this episode has a lot going on because, like we mentioned, it's a lot about the upcoming election. And it's weird because don't you
the most important election of their
but
lifetime.
also what I was going to say is that don't
until
you
the next
feel that, and obviously this wasn't the case always back before this, but in terms of modern elections, don't you feel this might have been the first truly modern election
I mean,
in a lot
that's
of ways?
been said in a lot of ways.
Right.
A lot of it tied to TV, and obviously the first ever televised presidential debate is in of itself a massive deal.
Now, of course, the next election of Goldwater versus Johnson, that felt like even more of what I'm saying, where it's like literally cut down the middle. I mean, literally like what Rick Perlstein had said with the what did he call it? The damaging of the consensus or whatever it's called. Like literally, like Goldwater is this, Johnson is this, and it was like this very different view of Cold War America and the way that. And obviously,
the truth of the matter is the difference between a Nixon administration in 60, not 68, in 60 versus a Kennedy administration in 60 is not as radical as many people would think, because they were both much more interested in foreign policy.
Right.
Actually, both pretty hawkish on the Cold War.
Yeah.
Kennedy, weirdly, even more so than Nixon was.
Also, I was going to say is Nixon was randomly progressive about certain aspects of domestic policy.
There was also a very specific window of time where the Republican Party could have been the one who went for civil rights more so than the Democratic Party did. And
because of its ties in the South, the Democrats in the South.
And I mean, King himself was at this stage a Republican and was actually close to endorsing Nixon at this time.
Okay.
I know this
I
all
wasn't as
seems
aware of
very
that,
radical,
especially
with what happens with Nixon later. But
I wasn't aware of that aspect.
When King was one of his arrests that happened in late 60, a few weeks before the election, there was this whole thing of John F. Kennedy kind of making an overture while he was in jail, and that had this massive... That finally the Democratic Party was starting, like, by Kennedy at the leadership started to go, maybe we're going to be the party more of civil rights, and they kind of beat the Republicans to the punch on that.
And that was probably partly a genuine thing.
That set off a series of dominoes that lasted the rest of the decade.
And that was probably partly a genuine thing, but also probably a certain amount of...
there was definitely electioneering in key swing states. Yeah, that was what that was partially tied to. Because
you could look at that era, and a lot of people could realize that even if they didn't agree with integration, segregation was a dying concept
system
just for government. And so, other than the fact it was the right thing to do, I'm sure that Kennedy also, like you said, saw that as electioneering, and so which I know you know a lot about this, particularly because you just read that book. What was it called? Parting the Waters.
The first of the branch books, yeah.
Which I'm going to read at some point, but I know they're doorstops.
The first one's the longest one, but that covers the most amount of time too. So
right, but it's an interesting period. I mean, this has one of my favorite things ever said in politics ever. Towards the end, I'll go ahead and tell you, it's this is a spoiler. It's not a prediction. It's a spoiler.
Yeah.
Is that I'm probably going to give my cultural reference, patchy palm, to the moment of Eisenhower, like, asked if you could say a good thing about Nixon, what would it be? And he's like, you know, I don't really know. It's like, oh my God, how bad that is. Like, you know, just politically, that's terrible.
Well, what's
that's
funny is
like
you said one of my favorite
public
things.
Execution.
Yeah, that is great. When you said one of my all-time favorite things said about politics, the first thing I thought of was 3 words that Don says upon watching the Nixon ad that they have turn it off. It's the first thing I thought of when you said that. Like,
I want to talk to you about dollars and cents. Like,
that is such a great,
yeah, right.
like, this is what this campaign looks like. This is what that campaign looks
like. They already kind of did that with Jackie Kennedy speaking Spanish as far as like a version of that.
Mm-hmm. I just want to real quickly go back to the civil rights thing.
Yeah, sure.
Neither one of these parties wanted anything to do with civil rights in 1960. They saw it as like, well, this is a party controlled by rich white people on both sides. Yeah. And they're like,
still pretty much
this is not like this is not our world or system. And also it was just seen as like, it's such a divisive issue. Like, you really want to run on that? So, like, this is what's sad, truly sad about this era. For Kennedy to go, I might be interested, was enough for black voters to go, oh, let's vote for him. Like, that speaks to just how, people talk about how politics is broken now, and it's broken in its own new ways and some old ways. But, like, that was, like, what got enough black voters in 1960 to go, oh, maybe Kennedy can be the guy for us.
Right.
Like, and
you started to see even an erosion of that belief in the Kennedys even by the mid-60s in a lot of black voters. I watch it all the time, parts of it, but I just watched all of it for the first time this week. The Buckley-Baldwin debate on whether or not African Americans suffered at the hands of the American dream, or that the American dream had used them as collateral to get things for white people, you know. Which, of course, Baldwin said, yeah. He said even more than that to say, well, what even is the American dream? And, like, question that even as a concept, obviously, but something he said that I always think about is he said, Bobby Kennedy only got here yesterday, and he says that maybe in 40 years, if we're good, we might be president, which is even weirdly eerie that it was actually about 44 years after he said that when we had the first black president. But that, you started to see that with black voters where they were like, well, what are these white people doing telling me what I already know? Yeah. Or maybe this can happen in it. And like he said, it seems very like progressive to say to white people maybe. But, he was like, well, we've been here just as long as you have, like, that sort of thing. And so I just think that's an important distinction to make, is that even by the mid-60s, the black voters, of course, were still voting Democrat, but were like,
and part of specifically black voters, Republicans had taken black voters for granted for the last, nearly 100 years, yeah. So, like, it's, and, not to get too much into modern politics, but you have black voters now voting in sometimes larger Republican numbers, specifically men, more than you've had in decades. And that, I think that in part that's because of the modern Democratic Party taking black voters for granted in the same way.
Hispanic voters too. Yeah. That's been a big exodus of that over the past probably 10 years. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and also just another thing to mention in that is that Baldwin even said about the Voting Rights Act, which had just kind of been either had just passed or was up for being passed in 1965. Yeah. That he was saying, we'll see how that goes. He said, the 15th Amendment was written 100 years ago and it still ain't working. So, he was like, why is this going to be any different? And of course it was, but it still took like 20 years for a lot of the South to come on board with that. Yeah. But it's very interesting to hear somebody say that at the time, because we look back at that and say, oh, yeah, that was definitely successful. Lyndon Johnson with the Civil Rights Acts and everything about that. Oh, wow, that really worked. But to see in the time, there's no wonder why there was some cynicism or disbelief in that to actually apply. Yeah. So that's what's so great about history, is you get to go back and see how people reacted in the moment to something that's totally different than what you'd expect. Because
so again, we've said this before, teaching kids the what if this, what if that. No. What happened is fascinating enough,
and the reactions in the moment are more fascinating because they're not the same reactions that we have now. Right. So
yeah. And thinking about it in those ways, makes you more conscious of thinking about what will people think about the days that we're living through right now.
And they even said this about Nixon at this time. He's done. He even said about himself
in 1962. But it was loosely this time where he lost this election. He then runs for governor in 1962, and he very famously had a press conference where he said, "You won't have Dick Nixon to kick around anymore." And the whole press was like, "Yeah, good, done with you."
Yeah,
and then he spent 6 years in the wilderness, and then came back in '68, obviously,
and ultimately won at the cost of multiple other assassinations and political turmoils and all kinds of other things that led to the 1968 election, where Hubert Humphrey was the guy. Mm-hmm. It's like
Hubert Humphrey. I was always like to say Hubert Humphrey, the most Hubert Humphrey looking man you'll see today.
Go look up pictures of him in supermarkets and stuff, and it's like literally looks like your grandpa at some like old picture of your grandpa, but it's like no, that guy ran for president.
He was a senator from Minnesota.
But anyway, back to this episode.
Well, speaking of Hubert Humphrey, Eugene Hofstadter. He's kind of the Hubert Humphrey of this show in a lot of ways. And he kind of becomes the Ronald Reagan by the end of it, He's not sure where he is, kind of confused.
It had
has a lot of
regrettable STD, UTI. I didn't really know what was going on. Yeah, the
regressive ideas.
There's that one moment, I know we'll get to it later, but that part where he's like, it's a dead man's hat, take it off. And he's like, and then he takes and he takes out a little fan, and he's like, there was this girl.
Yeah. That right there speaks to me of we all have those memories, specifically of Weiner's age and a little older, of that grandpa or that older uncle who told us a little something that we look back on and go, well, that was not appropriate for my age to hear. But as a kid, you're like, oh, okay.
I have memories
you just
of
take
things
it in,
very specifically that I'm not going to talk about because they're not safe for work. Let's just say that.
Don't you think we really missed out on having some kind of road trip episode with Don and Gene just driving down the road together, going somewhere? That would have been a great little, tete-a-tete, basically.
Where are you
so
going? And it's like, we've been looking for you, Real quickly, last aside before we truly get back to the episode here. You remember Coach Menegay. Was he alive when you were at Hudson Middle School?
He was just a
baseball coach, I think.
Oh, I
remember him?
I think, yeah.
Was he alive then, or did he pass away by then already?
I think he was. Yeah. I think I do remember.
Because he was, I think, had passed away by the time I was there. Anyway, reason I bring this up, I was talking to Dwight Joplin. Hello, Dwight. I'm sure you're not listening, but hello. We were helping do lines on the field. I was helping him do lines on the soccer field the other day and that took a long time. Anyway, he was talking about Coach Menegay, which I hear people, it's weird. It's like I heard people talk about him 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's like now a lot of people who were there then are gone. So it's like he's even more not being mentioned. I mean, they've got a whole mural for him and all these people are probably like, who's that? But anyway, he was talking about he was in World War II and that he said that he at the end of the war was going through France and Germany as a cleanup crew or whatever, and said he didn't say specifically about all the crazy stuff he'd seen, and then said he actually was a manager for the Yankees at one point.
Really?
Of some, not the main guy, probably,
right.
One of the managers or something. And I was thinking, imagine seeing all that from all the stuff he saw in World War II, being at the Yankees, and then standing in the 1990s at a Hudson Middle School baseball game and somebody screaming and yelling, and he's just I literally have lived a life that is so...
Was he in the Pacific or Europe?
No, he was in Europe because he said he went through Germany and France.
Okay,
So that was when everything was destroyed. And he was talking about how bad everything was. Everything was just
like you said. Meanwhile,
and
he's
and then literally, I think
because
I asked him because I asked Dwight. I said, when would he have been with the Yankees? He said, I said 50s, 60s. He said probably the 60s, and I'm sure they probably won some World Series in there somewhere. I don't know,
I think
or we're pretty close to. So it's I'm sure that he's standing there thinking, I literally was in a World Series, and this parent is you don't know, blah, blah. Anyway, that makes me think about, those stories that are being lost, like you said, and it's I would have loved to talk to somebody like that and be like, oh, what was that like? Mm-hmm. Because even at my age, there were very few World War II veterans that I knew personally.
They started to die off more in mass in the 90s.
And so there's still even some alive, obviously, but in the next
every day.
2 decades they'll be gone. But I think about that with Holocaust survivors too. That'll be just a little longer because a lot of them were younger children. But
that's what's wild to think about is the Vietnam veterans now,
or where they were,
are what I remember in the 90s, late 90s as a kid. Like the era Saving Private Ryan was being made, like that was how old the World War II veterans were then, and that's how old the Vietnam
and
veterans
so I just think
now.
about that, and but I was going to say, like, our grandfather was in the Navy in World War II, but I think he wasn't in it very long because he had, like, yellow fever, jaundice or something, and he got out of it.
I had a student a few years ago, and she actually showed me the paperwork. She'd made copies of it and gave me some that she had a grandfather who was on a ship at Pearl Harbor when it was bombed or whatever. I don't remember his name, but I've got some records of it.
A survivor, that's a big deal because there weren't very many.
Obviously, he's passed away some years now, but he was at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, but and even our great uncle, who was like grandfather to us, he didn't go to World War II because I think he didn't pass a fitness test or something. Like he couldn't lift boxes or something. I don't know. Knowing him, he might have found a way to get out of it. I don't know. Not to slander Arnold Starnes. Just saying,
don't worry, we won the war.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I never grew up knowing a lot of people that I could talk to about that. So even hearing about Coach Menegay and like that, and then also being in the Yankees, I'm just kind of like, what? I want to hear that story, like and so that reminds me.
And the thing is, like, and I'm sure Dwight heard all that, but then now you're hearing it from him
secondhand,
and
it will be a different,
just by nature of stories,
right?
It's,
but so this episode you'll have the two twins like, hey, remember that time that old man had a heart attack after he lost the Dr. Scholl's account? But
so obviously the name itself, Long Weekend. Every time I hear it, I think it's Lost Weekend, which I've still never read that book or seen that movie,
the Billy Wilder.
But every time I hear like what that's about, I'm like, that sounds like an episode of Mad Men. It's just like somebody having a drunken stupor over a weekend. It's like I mean, basically episodes are akin to that. In some way.
That's Freddie Rumpson's life every week.
Yeah.
I mean,
Lost Lifetime,
right?
Long Lifetime,
lost. Lost purpose. I don't know. But so
I love, by the way, looking at the plot description of this episode, like seeing the things that are hyperlinked.
Yeah.
Betty.
Right.
Jean.
Yeah.
Labor Day. Gloria. Dawn. Roger. Joan. Carol McCready. Scapegoat. Like the concept of being a scapegoat. Like
what is that talking about?
It says Carol is distressed when she's fired from her posting job because she was made the scapegoat for her boss's mistake.
Oh.
If you go to scapegoat,
obviously it's
it's got like
the idea of sending out the goat into the wilderness that the Jews had. They put all their sins on it, and it
and then Pete,
like in the book of Leviticus,
Dr. Scholl's and heart attack. So that's
at least coronary got on there.
Yeah. Just thinking about again, last thing here before we get into the episode. This would have been my 15th birthday. This is
do you feel complicit?
Yes, I do.
In what? Who knows?
That's my actions and thoughts led to Roger Sterling's coronary.
Well, do you have problems remembering a good thing about Richard Nixon? It's funny. I wouldn't take as long to remember something good about Richard Nixon. There's a couple things. EPA, which that hadn't happened yet by then, but. Yep, I'm fresh out. That's all I could think of.
Well, I could go. I might have mentioned. I don't think I've mentioned this really too much in depth. Nixon is one of those figures that I'm so fascinated by. I can never say I hate. Like because there's a certain point you reach with people that you're so interested in. Like even if you think they're despicable people, that you're like, I can never say I hate that because I'm too interested in it to really say I hate. But a deeply despicable guy. One of my favorite things.
Don't worry, there's worse presidents.
Yeah, there were.
And there are.
One of my favorite Nixon
and
details.
His name is John.
One of my favorite Nixon stories is that he would he obviously had bugged the White House and people being in the Oval Office but he would want them to say their own names as it was I Richard Nixon and you. And then, would want them to say their own names out loud, so it would be easy to identify later.
Haldeman, whatever.
But he did because
Gordon Liddy.
Because I think there was a few people that after the fact were like, why is he doing that? And then like they heard he found out he was recording, and it was like, oh, okay, so it's like could be easily figured out like who.
You know
was
what's
who.
a random detail I always think about is how people sometimes go to defend Nixon by saying, well, Johnson, he was doing that before he was. Like that makes it normal to still do. Yeah. Plus, that makes me think, well, what was Johnson doing? Like,
speaking of, did you hear recently about like Bill Murray was on? I think he was on Joe Rogan. I think it was, and Woodward wrote that book on John Belushi.
Yeah, Wired. Yeah.
That's it. And he said he started to read that book. And he threw it across the room. He's like, oh, there's all these lies, and it's just, that's not who John was, and all this stuff. And then he said he had the thought of like, wow, Nixon had to be framed if that's what they're saying about John Belushi or whatever, my friend that I know that these things didn't happen. And he recently said this within the last few weeks. He's like, oh, I bet that Nixon was framed then because they lied about John here, and I know he had to lie about Nixon or whatever. It's just like, and then like I think the Nixon Presidential Library started to share something because I follow them like a weirdo.
Yeah.
On they randomly make all these fan cams that are hilarious.
Oh, that's them people. Yeah, because
the
they do
Nixon
that.
Foundation or Nixon Presidential Library then shared some of that stuff. Like,
they got something cooking in the social media office down there. That's all I know. But
and then I was like, oh my god, this is so stupid. Like, are you kidding me? There's like all this overwhelming amount of evidence that.
There's the
everything
tapes.
that like
There's
that
the tapes.
Nixon said and did was like
even the stuff that wasn't redacted and destroyed. There's all this stuff there. You can go literally. There's books of transcripts you can go read.
Yeah,
like
I'm just baffled by that, and I was like,
just
like
also,
Bill Murray. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm sure
like,
most of that stuff about Belushi was true. I mean, like,
well, yeah. So that's a whole other thing.
How does Murray know? He probably don't even remember half of that stuff because he was high or drunk or something.
Yeah,
like Bill Murray's kind of I like Bill Murray, but he's got some problems.
I know you have some like reservations about Tom Hanks.
Barely,
but like Bill Murray.
No, yeah, there's a lot of smoke there.
Well, also there's some.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Adjacent stuff.
No, let me address the Tom Hanks thing because I feel like I'm being slandered. So Tom Hanks is without question a gem, a true wonder.
I thought
totally
it was
great,
Tom, but that's just me.
Thomason,
Hankerson,
Tomathan.
What's his full name? Let's look it up.
But
we'll get to the episode eventually. Don't worry.
But the thing about Tom Hanks,
Thomas Jeffrey Hanks,
he's great.
But
I'm just saying, like, I'm just saying this is like he might be in too many things. Maybe that's what it is. Like, you know what I mean?
This is a debate I've heard people had in recent years is like,
what's that Samuel Jackson?
Whose career / movie stardom would you rather put stock in and invest in hypothetically? Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise?
Tom Hanks.
Why? I'm not saying that's the wrong answer.
Because he hasn't wasted as much time as Tom Cruise has. Like, even though Tom Hanks has been in a lot of things, I feel like they have been choices that have been relatively sound, whereas Tom Cruise has wasted and we talk about this all the time, has wasted so much time on action stuff. Not that action stuff isn't better than most other action
I would also
movies.
have Tom Hanks, but I think the highs of Cruise are higher.
Yes.
Because
as far as
he's
his
worked
90s
with Stanley
work is
Kubrick,
great.
he worked with Paul Thomas
Cameron
Anderson.
Crowe.
But then also, Hanks worked with Spielberg on multiple occasions.
Right. No, I agree. I think Cruise
and the Cruise
best
Spielberg collaborations were not exactly as good as they could have been. Now, I really actually quite like Minority Report. War of the Worlds is kind of so-so. It's fine.
Right.
But anyways.
But no, I mean, like, here's the deal. Tom Hanks is great, but I think every man of their era starts to be a little stale.
I think that's true of both of them. I think the last 20-ish years of both of them have been a little, because you think of those like say later era Jimmy Stewart movies.
That's what I'm saying.
Like you said, it's just like you play that every man everybody loves. It's hard to really find
like
new
I'm
roles
talking like
that.
News of the World Tom Hanks.
Right.
That movie that came out a couple years ago.
What's that one he did that was like it's like a World War II naval movie?
Oh,
like about
literally
Atlantic
what?
Thing.
Yeah,
like, I don't remember.
Might as well call it literally what? I don't know, movie.
Yeah,
that's all that.
I mean, he was in here. I mean, I think that was
Otto,
yeah,
whatever. I'm just saying. Here's all I'm saying. I think Tom Hanks is great, but he can come off a little shrill to me sometimes, just because of the nature of the roles he plays.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but then you'll see him in something like Saving Private Ryan or even Forrest Gump, which is a movie I don't love, but is like a commanding performance. Like,
we talked about Castaway recently.
And Castaway, of course.
On our by the way, check out if you haven't listened to it, our second annual Harry Dean Stanton Awards pod on Overlapping Dialogue feed.
So Tom Hanks is great, but all I'm saying is okay, are you going to do anything different?
He was really good in Captain Phillips. You remember that scene towards the end of that movie where he's basically got PTSD?
No,
I've never
that's a great
seen
scene.
him act a scene like that before.
Where are you talking about when they get him
on the boat,
off the boat?
Trying to help him out. Or
that's a very memorable movie in a lot of ways, but also that's good.
I'm one of the biggest Bridge of Spies fans you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
So
he works pretty well with Paul Greengrass in general, mostly. Although, like I said, that News of the World is probably good, but it's another Road to Perdition again, basically.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. My Tom Hanks opinion is randomly complex, but also incredibly simple. Is that it's he is great, but also, come on, let's do something else.
Yeah.
I mean, you see him in the Zemeckis movies he's been in recently, here, and it's whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
then again, as we said with Cruise, he's on the other side with him. It's he's just, I think, loosely ever since, I know it's been a while, the couch incident in 2005 where he was jumping on the couch on Oprah. He's and then on some of the controversies with Scientology, he's been well, the one thing I know I can do and people love is me making action movies. So I'm just gonna.
He doesn't want to risk
commit
anything.
to that.
Right. Yeah, I mean that, and similarly the. Matt, you're so glib. Fine. Hey, I don't blame him for that one. He turned out to be right on that one. Even before all the Ann Curry and whatever stuff that was.
Well, they were debating by the way, they're debating psychiatric drugs on the Today Show. It's what are we talking? Is this what Today Show is supposed to be? The Today Show,
Matt.
getting into all that.
You're so glib. Emphasis on ib.
Anyways,
long weekend. Sorry, where are we? I don't know.
My feet are cramping me right now, though. I gotta say, let's just take a brief station break.
Yeah.
Hopefully, there's a product that can,
with a really annoying jingle,
alleviate this problem.
Yeah. Maybe it's Maybe it's Maybelline. Aleve. No, it's Dr. Scholl's. Look out! Here he's coming.
Groovy eyes, groovy hair, groovy legs, groovy girl. You're walking pretty now in sandals made by shore. All the guys turn their heads, yeah, their minds are in a whirl. You're walking pretty now in sandals made by shore. Ba ba ba, ba ba ba. Groovy eyes, groovy hair, groovy legs, groovy girl. You're walking pretty now in sandals made by shore. All the guys turn their heads, yeah, their minds are in a whirl. You're walking pretty now in sandals made by shore. Ba ba ba, ba ba ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. Groovy eyes, groovy hair, groovy legs, groovy girl. You're walking pretty now in sandals made by shore. Ba ba ba, ba ba ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. Shore exercise sandals. Shore exercise.
wow, what a product, what a jingle. I mean, I was thinking about using something else, but I was like, as many of these jingles of the period we can find as we're going through this show, like we need to like highlight them as much as we can.
Ear rape as we can find, as they say.
So as always, we're watching this from the Blu-ray. Hit and play in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we're officially on disc 3 of season 1. So this look like What Is My Life?
Of season 10, episode 3.
Yeah.
Like, that fall.
Speculative, like what future seasons?
Season 30, it's like in the year 2085.
Yeah.
Like, Sterling Cooper has their biggest issue yet. Like,
and it's like they have Cooper's head in a like in Futurama with Nixon's head like in a jar or whatever, keeping him alive.
But it's like looks like the dollar bill Nixon or the $5 Burt Cooper. Like,
remember last time somebody run in this house, they got slapped in the face,
and then he fell down the steps.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
wow, give me that old time thermometer.
Have more degrees than a thermometer. Love that fit.
Yeah. I think it's about the only thing I'll ever love about him, but we'll see. We'll keep it running.
Here he's kind of not crazy.
Yeah, this is before he really gets dementia.
Yeah.
This winch that he's with that, like, totally leaves him after, by that point in season 3 we're in. I will say, he seems like a good grandpa. That's one thing you can say about him.
There's other things you could say.
Yeah.
We'll talk about him later. How many episodes will he lose or win? That's what I want to know.
Ha ha ha. Women do all of our work.
So we can go talk about them?
I think we mentioned this before. I love this kitchen. Like, the wood paneling reminds me of our grandmother's house.
That's what I was thinking.
We might have said that before, but the little gripe session behind the scenes.
I recently found out what a Sadie Hawkins dance is.
Something the kids are doing on TikTok now.
No, they had one at school, and I had to have it explained to me.
Uh-huh.
So as a cultural historian, I was like, "What is that? I don't know what that is." Like, you think the kids are gonna know what that is? Like,
well, again, it could be a new TikTok trend. I don't know.
Something about the women ask the men because the women are ugly or something. I don't know. I was very confused. It seemed very sexist, and I was kind of like, okay.
Huntley, by the way, like that's a name you never hear anymore.
Is that her brother?
I don't think so. I think he's talking about somebody else.
Oh,
because her brother's in this show later.
Right.
I know. Didn't that actor? He played J. Edgar Hoover in Boardwalk Empire, or was somebody?
Oh yeah,
like,
was it? Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, because there's that whole moment. He's like, "Who are you?"
Yeah,
J. Edgar Hoover, and it's like,
so
yeah,
it's but the audience,
I am Khan.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
my
like,
name is Gary.
Yeah, lobster rolls. So yeah, she's always like, "I don't want to go on this trip." He's like, "You want to go to the beach? You're going to the beach."
The women leave.
Why aren't you asleep?
Here we go.
Looks like a daggum Peanuts.
Yeah,
thing. Or like
the animation.
Peanuts meets like Schoolhouse Rock or something.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that old man?
Is that old Truman?
I think it might be.
Yeah, I think that might be who that was.
What was that black hand?
Yeah,
like?
It's creepy. Well, why don't you go do that right now? Why don't you go to the bathroom for an extended visit? Oh, Pete's little wisdom.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
I would like to talk to you for a moment about dollars and cents. Your dollars and cents. Now, my opponents want to increase federal expenditure.
now see, I'm a political nerd, history nerd, so I'm like, oh yes, tell me about all this. But deep down, I'm like, this is the most hackneyed, boring thing ever. Like, we never did get to find out
What's
what the other
funny
one
about
is.
that is that it's on film, but it has like a videotape look to it.
Yeah.
Like,
We should give this to Franz for some music. Nixon's campaign song in the key of E. F Get the ice pick. That Nixon guy is on TV again.
Well, it's like for his like wannabe beatness to like be working on the Nixon campaign.
Yeah.
See them.
Oh, I've seen them. Which reminds me, you people are not watching enough television. It is your job to
Not watching enough TikTok.
Yeah. You don't know about Sadie Hawkins dances.
Have we heard anything?
Harvesting mud.
Useful? He's a womanizer. That's not gonna hurt him.
He's like, yeah, I do that, so
Yeah.
that ain't that big a deal.
He's still ahead in the polls.
Should have never been this close.
Well, it is.
To attack when there's a story to tell.
This goes back to what we've talked about before of Don finding connection with himself and Nixon,
Yeah.
and Pete's the Kennedy.
Great. Nixon is for nothing. Self-made man, the Abe Lincoln of California, who was vice president of the United States 6 years after getting out of the Navy. Kennedy, I see a silver spoon. Nixon, I see myself.
If we were to run a critical ad, there are obvious.
I know Nixon's history in World War II is interesting. I can't remember exactly what like exact title he had, but he was somebody who basically mostly served in the Pacific, was like a requisitions officer and like sent missiles, or not missiles, but like weaponry
Yeah.
across the Pacific. It actually was an important job, but it didn't have the heroics of Kennedy's obviously
Right.
story with PT
What was
109.
his middle period between that and vice presidency? What did he do? He become governor?
He was a congressman,
Or congressman,
in California.
It was pretty quick. Mm-hmm.
Well, back then, especially all those guys who came home who had law degrees, or especially like they fought in the war, they came back and there was almost like all these seats waiting for him to just
Yeah.
run in.
How much on your best behavior? You know she's bothers.
Excuse me.
Those thin ties. He's wearing a friggin' bow tie.
I do prefer the thin tie to the big tie, I gotta say.
Well, I hate the 40s like thick short tie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like-
I think of the 30s too when I think of that.
Yeah.
This.
Yes, I would like to get a look at that.
It's all a game to him. But the game stops now.
Well, she like leaves the door open like, we're not going to get into any hanky-panky.
Along with every other wife in town, we can go anywhere tonight. We can see a Broadway show. Then sit at any table at the Colony with our clothes off.
Why would we want to do that?
Have you seen the apartment?
I went last week with Mona and Margaret.
I hear Shirley MacLaine is good.
Oh, please. A white elevator operator? And a girl at that? I want to work at that place.
Oh, I bet you do. The way those men treated that poor girl, handing her
Love that was the thing he got hung up on.
Yeah.
suicide.
So you saw it, huh? Oh, Red, that's not how it is. Look, it was crude. That's the way pictures are now.
As opposed to what? Yeah, this
Yeah.
was a Psycho reference.
Hollywood isn't half bad. It's too extreme.
Can't see that extreme.
What, Psycho or the apartment?
You know, Mona had a dream one night, like with the dog with the car. She was mad at me all day.
This
I might
is
have
some real
told-
gaslighting
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
We don't even have it.
We don't have it all.
The most recent time I saw Psycho around Halloween, they Flicker, not Fl- I was
Yeah.
Flicker Film, Foot Candle showed it at Carolina,
Mm.
and I finally buried and made peace with the ending. I was like,
Yeah,
you know what,
whatever.
the rest of this movie's so great,
It's
I don't
5,
even
yeah,
care.
whatever, who
Like,
cares?
yeah.
Yeah.
It actually is a nice design.
Nice. But 30
This is the first time we finally see her father.
Yeah.
to the restaurant business?
That old quote, bastard. B-S-T-I-D. B-A-S-T-I-D, sorry.
It's much longer than the little city.
Sorry, BTS,
We have to close our
Korean
Yeah.
K-pop group.
3 months of construction, during which time we build enormous anticipation.
Enormous. Literally, it's, oh my god. They spelled premiere wrong, by the way. Like the Russian kind.
Yeah.
We'll do whatever it takes. Mr. Draper, my daughter's presence here should let you know that I am not against change. And let us assume that this is the most amazing idea in retail since buy one, get one free. I still don't understand why we have to throw out the baby with the water.
Forget Roger a few episodes again. It's like, genius in advertising, 99 cent.
Yeah.
Somebody had to think of that. BOGO.
Your customers cannot be dependent on anymore. Their lives have changed. They're prosperous. Over the years, they've developed new tastes. They're like your daughter.
Like a nice gray suit, like what Don's got there.
They know full well what they deserve, and they're willing to pay for it. Why would I want to own a store that I wouldn't want to shop in? Mr. Megan, I don't know if that's true. You have no problem abandoning that second-floor hosiery store on 7th Avenue for your present location. And that's a story you'll be proud to tell your grandchildren. The only problem is they don't care.
You don't have any.
As much as Grandpa likes that marble palace, I can promise you they won't. They'll look at it and they'll say, Grandpa, it must have been hard back in the olden days. And it was. Everybody's jumping to forget it.
Excuse me. This is not some
This is bull ass.
This sucks.
July circulars. My father actually started with nothing. And he made it into everything we're talking about.
Don's little face there, like, really?
I meant no disrespect, sir. None taken.
This is the plan, Daddy. As you can see, it wasn't just thrown together.
It does seem very well thought out.
It is.
Well, thank you for that sage advice, Mr. Campbell.
Especially season 1, Pete in meetings is just so like, ah ha ha, look at me. I know, I'm so smart. I know what's going on.
It's
You
like
want to
watching,
die?
It's
You
like
wanna-
watching Mark Sanchez try to throw a ball. Like,
Mark Sanchez fell down, but fumbled.
yeah.
The butt fumbler. It sounds like a really bad Hamburglar spinoff.
Yeah.
Like,
But it's real, and it can hurt you.
Fortunately, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'd love to have been in the advertising meetings at McDonald's or whatever, and they came up with, we're going to make all these mascots like to help sell it. And it's like the Hamburglar. He's like
He
he's
steals
a burglar.
hamburgers.
It's like, but isn't that going to make people try to do that at our office? Like, closed for Labor Day.
It's 10:30. Did we have lunch? Because even I can't leave this early. No, I needed to talk to you.
She was a
L.A. Noir.
L.A. Noir
There's
murderer.
another
Yeah.
one.
She's the one that got that guy to push her husband in front of a car
Yeah.
after he'd been stabbed.
You know how Mr. Aldridge has had me reading the slush file? Yes, writing the rejection letters you told me. It's depressing. I'm so stupid. This morning in this admissions meeting,
Slush pile. That sounds like a spinoff of Garbage Pail Kids. Like,
The
special
slush,
new,
the dustbin of history, the slush pile of history. History.
said that I had read it and rejected it. Then they made Mr. Aldridge fire me. Oh, honey, that's awful.
She really looks like she's in L.A. Noir right now. Like, got
Yeah.
big eyes. Like, doubt on
Yeah,
her.
lie. Literally, if Cole Phelps walked in here from out there, he'd literally be like. What's funny is that that game would have been being made when this show first kind of came on the air, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, so
It's interesting too that like her friend here is obviously a lesbian, and
Right.
she's wanting to pursue a relationship with Joan, and I think she takes Joan complaining about men, all these men, as like, oh, I bet maybe she thinks the same way, but it turns out it's just,
grading papers.
Yeah.
Howdy
And it's
dowdy.
interesting too later on in the show where Peggy kind of runs into some homoerotic situations, and she's heterosexual, but she's like not as put off by Joan is exactly, you know.
Yeah.
They were disappointed with the creative. Raleigh called it dull and humorless.
What would you say?
What could I say? I've never lost an account before, especially one that was here before I got here.
So you read the fight.
I had very strong feelings. Said some unpleasant things.
Which you don't remember, or I'm sure you tell me.
Yeah, he kind of feels bad about it.
Am I going to cry?
Yeah.
Don't he throw something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About Dr. Scholl's. I'd be glad I didn't have that jingle on my roster. That jingle on my bell.
Stick a shoal in your ass the American way. Take him out immediately.
It's like they fire you for 2 seconds and you destroy everything.
So I want to burn Dr. Scholl's to the ground. It's like what he says here.
We lost Dr. Scholl. Where? Leo Burnett.
Well, I don't know. They were in my shoes the last time I looked.
I should tell you, make sure the ink is dry on that raise. That piece of shit. Cigarette ash. Chicago. Sorry, maybe you're from there. Well, I don't want
He's like, well, whatever.
All right, let's drink.
I know I didn't.
Yeah.
Did you see that? All there were no spaces. No, I didn't.
Eventually, Joan is going to read the mail.
trying to cheer me up. It's working.
The day you sign a client, you start losing it.
You don't really believe that.
He says when he just said that.
That's a classic Sopranos kind of writing where it's like one character repeats something else another one says,
Yeah.
but then they cast doubt on it in
Yeah.
another context. Like stuff happened all the time on that show. Did. Yeah, let's drink it off.
Am I going to cry?
Have to cut back. Let's go fry
Let's go cut the cake.
Let's go fire somebody. There's a lot of moments of Roger on the show like my name's on the building. I can fire whoever I want. Like
I do that when I point at my name on the door.
What do we work so hard for? To have enough money to buy fabulous vacations for our families so we can live it up here. Give me tonight. You owe me that. I can use you as bait.
Oh, what? Well, he does owe him quite a bit, actually. I mean, he literally lied to get into the company, so.
not that he knows that, but yeah.
That moment when he kind of does that look in the elevator.
Yeah.
That's almost like, okay.
Season 4.
Yeah, that's a little bit too much.
Remember, Don, when God closes a door, he opens a dress.
I don't think
Is
so.
that in the Fool's Gold or Sterling's Gold
Yeah, it
book?
is.
I don't
Yeah.
imagine, yeah.
The Bible, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. It's funny, I thought you were going to say, is that in the Bible? And then you said the real Bible, like Sterling's Gold. No. Like,
If you want to see the proofs, you'll have to check with Mr. Cosgrove. It's his account.
Look at you, Mr. Protocol. So, has Draper talked
I
to
like that blue suit, too.
I'm asking you.
You should talk to
for you and Mister being an owl. That's
Well, yeah.
I'm just trying to do my job and you're making it very difficult.
Becky, dear, I think I understand what this is about, but you're not being professional right now.
I cannot believe I'm in this company.
Yeah, I feel that way pretty much every conversation I ever have with a student.
I don't know if you like me or if you don't like me. I'm just trying to get along here. And every time I walk by, I wonder, are you going to be nice to me
Am I gonna cry?
or cruel?
Cruel. What am I supposed to say? I'm married.
Yes, I know. And I heard all about how confusing that can be. Maybe you need me to lay on your couch to clear that up for you again.
That's some imagination you've got. Good thing you're a writer now. What do you need me for?
Don't you feel like this conversation happens every episode at this point?
You know, watching this season again, it's occurring more frequently than I remember
Yeah.
it happening.
I mean, where does hanging out love you?
Horn dog center right here. Toys R Us. Like,
Such exquisite look. Bones of your face.
don't you feel like everything's been going downhill since we got rid of Toys R Us?
Yeah, I mean, that is one of those societal declines, you know.
Was growing up had a dairy, and one of the cows gave birth to 2 calves that were attached at the back. Then they cut them apart, but they always wanted to be together. Is that what happened to you too?
What a weird way to describe that. Ukrainian food?
Do any of these men have anything else to do? I just wanted to make sure the girls were, matching.
Exactly.
So then they do the same thing.
Yeah,
so.
but we can do it because we're further up the food chain.
Well, there you have it, Draper. Double-sided aluminum, as envisioned by Sterling Cooper.
It's funny they react more positively to the older men than the younger ones, but because it's all a game.
Look at you. Roger Sterling.
Eleanor
Ames.
What a great God that made two of you.
That's a sweet thing to say. Mirabelle.
This is Donald Draper. He's our creative director here.
Later on, we're like, Mirabelle.
Well, honestly, I think we're going to send everyone else home and use our authority to say that you two are the new faces of Cartwright double-sided aluminum.
Meanwhile, the other ones are just sitting there like, okay.
I think this calls for a celebration. Come on upstairs with us.
Wonder it could be fun?
One last question. How many birthdays have you had?
20.
How about her?
Those is other two.
Yeah, they're like still talking it over.
Like, where are we gonna go eat lunch at? Like, it's a little later than that actually. Supper time.
Have some stank. And no, I didn't mispronounce steak.
Two a pair of bookends. What do you say, Draper? Shall we cast them in bronze and mount them on the credenza?
Oh my.
What the hell's a credenza?
Something else too.
I saw that in something recently. Somebody said that, I think. Actually, now I'm thinking about it. It was in an ad for a TV show. They were like, it's on the credenza. And they were like, what's a credenza? Kind of funny.
Dining room sideboard or display
The
cabinet.
dining room cyborg. What?
Sounds like a good sitcom. Dining room cyborg.
Mostly dressage. She's a wall full of
Especially Bicentennial Man, but not BS.
I mean, a few years ago. That reminds me of that show back in the day, the $6 Million
That's
Man.
see-through.
That Mark Wahlberg
That
was like,
shot.
those the $6 Million Man. We're gonna do a remake called the $6 Billion Man. And I acted like no irony whatsoever, just like that's how cool is that gonna be? Like idea. If you want to hear us talk about Mark Wahlberg, go check out the Planet of the Apes 2001 remake on the overlapping dialogue feed.
It's weird as hell.
Yeah. So his own daughter's like this age or younger. It's just like.
He's like,
And Don's kind of flirting with whether or not he's
Right.
into this, and he's like,
yeah.
It is always interesting that Don's womanizing is always something he wants to do in private, like not with, anybody else.
You want to dance?
That's nice. Dance for us.
And he's like, feels pressured by his boss to
I don't dance.
dance.
Sure you do. Look at that.
I feel like I'm stuck somewhere between Doris Day and Philly Talk and Midnight Race. And what I need today is Kim Novak and just about anything. You're prettier than Kim Novak. What a rut. 1960, I am so over you. That's it?
It's 1960.
Shallow? Too much?
Some women are swinging both ways. Actually, just kind of one way, apparently. But as far as the preference, I don't know. Preferential treatment.
I know. I'm okay, actually. Good.
Do you think it's funny? Sometimes in Carousel, it talks about, like, it said that was a reference to Gone with the Wind. Footnote. Gone with the Wind was a film. It's like, I know what Gone with the Wind is. Like,
I wonder if sometimes that's being, we're referring, of course, to the Batman Carousel, Matt Zoller Seitz's big recap companion to the show, which we've been reading along with this. Anyways, to give my little summation of what that is. But I wonder if it's like that's really being written for like, when this is read years and decades in advance, need to make a reference to that. Oh, well, that's nice. And then she's like, no, I'm taking it to the next step. It's the first example we see in the show of even women being attracted to Joan. Not that makes it sound like there's going to be a big recurring
Yeah, I was going to
subplot
say,
of that,
I mean,
not
there's going to
really,
be,
but,
hanging from the rafters, there's going to be so many.
yeah. I guess other than the Belgially lipstick guy, this is the first. This is the biggest overture towards queerness there's been in the show so far.
Mm-hmm. When meanwhile, Lee Garner Jr. has been there the whole time.
Yeah, we don't find that out till later.
He's only been in one episode so far, though, I guess.
Yeah.
I once held Lee Garner Jr.'s balls.
And puts that in.
And everybody's like,
context, yeah.
it's like he's so tired or something. It's like, what have you done all day? Oh, smoke and drink. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I guess that would take a lot out of you.
It's a big job, yeah. Wow.
So stupid.
I really should go.
Eleanor, I'll be right outside.
Let me come in your car.
I should wait for my sister. I mean, I've been around the block a few times, but her. Now all you're thinking about is going around the block, huh?
How do you think I can get out of the driveway?
It's just hilarious. This is a one-time Don's like, not really being that bad. Like,
Yeah.
I like your office. It's really fancy.
Well, again, he has a certain conditional form of chivalry he practices, like when
That's
he
also
wants to.
his embarrassment of actually discussing sex among other men too,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like the mirror about there than
which should be more of the norm. But whatever.
Yeah.
Margot.
Why is she so angry?
Because you're her father.
She's she's a little older than his daughter, so it's not so bad, right?
Sounds familiar. Like somebody in government said something like that one time. I wonder who it is. It starts with a T, ends with rump.
I want to suck your blood like Dracula.
Alright.
Anyways.
What if he said Dragula?
Yeah.
He seems to be a delightful young man.
Ralph, you don't teach up for him also?
No, we're just sitting next to each other at the bar. It seems to be working.
These are such mid 20th century looking men.
Yeah.
Like,
The point where you're like, were they literally beamed from the
that's
past?
what I love about been watching more Star Trek the original series recently,
Yeah.
and like it's this far future of 25, 26, whatever, and then you have men that look like this as the crew members of the Enterprise that look like they served in World War II, basically. Like, it's just kind of funny.
There's this Polish janitor in our bar.
Oh, ha ha ha.
Stanislaus. He's locked me out of my office on more than one occasion.
Well, what does the fact that he's Polish have anything to do with, you know, him locking you out of your office?
Speaking real good English. cherish that gift.
Put that in a book and sell it.
Well, this is a party, isn't it?
Well, this is a party. I'm just like, what? What are you, daggum Looney Tunes character? Like,
Never say no to a beautiful girl.
excuse me.
I'm sick of all the BS in this episode.
Not well. I meant to mention earlier. I've been going through allergy problems, so if my voice sounds annoying, like more than usual, then that's probably why. It's like a daggum scene from The Graduate in there, like. It's like Terry the Toad in American Graffiti. I think you're really great. Terrence the Toad.
You're married, aren't
Yes.
It's like he's getting he's like a therapist or
Yeah,
something. It's
like he's getting processed.
Yeah.
Imagine him having to deal with like
Freddie
the
Quayle.
split saber kind of people, like, you know. Master Peggy, as they say. Yeah, something's wrong, all right. The music.
So something bad's going on. On my chest.
Call an ambulance and then leave.
you? Okay?
Leave. Right there.
Leave right there,
Yeah.
right out that door.
Because there's so many entrances.
He gives him a little slap.
Yeah. And they're just like, yeah.
No, we see this every day.
Looks like he did when he threw up the oysters.
Yeah, I was gonna say he looks really pale.
Paler than the oyster vomit.
He's the office's token pale face.
What? Get out. Somebody was acting like that one.
He's so mad at him.
Yeah.
It looks like. I hope so. They told you more than that. It's like he's so shocked. It's like you're drinking and smoking all the time, every day.
I'm telling you, he doesn't really care that
Yeah, he's
much.
like, I want to get out of here.
That can literally mean anything, you know, like. Oh, of course, the other kind.
The soul.
What, you mean the Dr. Scholl's thing?
And then Don's like, sits here, thinks he calls him up. So I got an idea.
Yeah. I got it this time. Sorry, I ripped up your paperwork. You're going to have to file it again.
But so, like, the ad's going to start with a businessman having a coordinator in the office. And they're like,
He's like, do I have a soul?
He's like, you got us so far. Keep going.
Yeah.
Like,
We want that to happen,
Yeah.
especially in his case. Especially in his Juan Carlos case. Everybody listening
this all
is like,
does
what?
feel very season one of
Yeah.
any show. Like, oh, one of the main characters kind of sort of has a heart attack. The main character, thinking about his own mortality, goes and runs to one of his mistresses. Like, because again, as we know, in the grand scheme of things, this does not end up being a big deal. But
Well, that kind of happened to Tony Soprano in the first season of The Sopranos, and then of course, that whole first season of Succession is about that. That happens pretty often. Somebody big dies or almost dies or something. The show demands it. Season 1 demands. Season 10, episode 3 demands.
Demands you pay homage.
Don's like, can I leave now, or what do you recommend? 2 out of 3 doctors recommend.
She looks so young compared to where she ends up being by the end.
Hippieville.
Yeah.
The true end of Roger Sterling is then. Pete shows up. Like, oh, I want to be here. Please. Okay.
Whatever happened to him? This got real big, like Fredo effed up.
Right.
The Don has been shot vibes.
One of those classic typing but moody vibes.
Which this show has a great many of those.
Oh yeah.
Is it season 4 that one episode that ends where it's like Don's typing, he looks out the window,
No,
and he
that's
starts typing again?
Well, there's a couple of those.
6, I can't
no, well,
remember.
the one I always think of is the one in season 7 with the carousel song. Was that what you're talking about?
Oh, well, that's one too.
That's what I always think
yeah.
of. And Peggy does that 3 or 4 times. Like, we need to do that at the end of the show. Favorite moody typing moment. Like,
I mean, true, technically. Well, missing some key details there.
he's like, I don't really want to hear about this.
He's like, I really don't care. That's why I didn't go.
I don't know. Thanks. IDK classic.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your IDK.
Heartfelt IDK.
Heartfelt IDKs to you. This will be a Valentine. I don't know.
Let's turn this IDK into an IDC.
Yeah. I don't care.
I love
it.
We've been in a mood for the show to drop that, in there.
They did Sunshine, Lollipops, and Rainbows. Why don't they do that?
What's that? Nothing you can do. She's like, okay, good.
Yeah,
I
really.
wasn't planning on doing anything anyways.
Oh, he just looked like he appeared.
Yeah. He spawned in.
He respawned.
He spawned ranched in.
A la, well, wow, you really know a lot tonight, don't you? All right, here we go. That's so bad, though. That should be something that you have prepared.
Yeah.
Until he's had a drunk.
He's in a bad way.
Yeah. When his hair gets that certain, like, coup de grace, if you know what I mean.
My boss had a heart attack. My family's away. Eisenhower just buried Nixon. Like, I need you right now. I got the email.
He needs me, he needs me, he needs me.
No.
He needs me. Why aren't you asleep?
Because you woke me up.
Yeah. It's like, you look terrible. Does anybody ever look terrible? I mean, like, from being, like, in the way of, oh, no, you look terrible. Rather than just, you look like trash. Like, we need more of that.
You look like walking human waste.
How resentful that sounds. Talking about this is The Godfather or something.
Yeah.
It's like
season 1 Mad Men fans were like, how's Sterling Cooper going to make it through this?
Not really.
This is the first minor crisis of the company, of which there will be many more.
How wooed. I don't know. How many times has he said that in the past 10 minutes? Like 5?
Yeah, sit down, please.
I need to sit down. Chemical. Sit with me. Why? Yeah. What about looking right through you over
He's definitely
here?
like escalating things like in a big way from what they had been with him. You manage the Undertaker also? He's like, wait a minute. He's like, Dr. Scholes, I got an addendum. I got a new idea to add. Like
a soul for caskets now.
Shoes for the casket body, like special shoes you want to put on the corpse. One-time sale. Don't gotta worry about them bringing it back. Like, it's foolproof. Can't lose.
Fire sale. In the words of that one line from a
This is
Herschel
it.
Gordon Lewis movie, "You're damaged goods, and this is a fire sale."
This is it, he's saying. Well,
Yeah.
if he only would have learned this truth at this stage, like how different the whole show
You
would have
don't
been
really
for
believe
him.
that? Yeah, I do. You can't just challenge anything anybody says by you don't really believe that. Sometimes people actually believe stuff.
Yeah,
believe
some
it or
people are
not.
literally
believe
insane.
it or not. Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Never forget the Dean Cain show. Remember that? Well, he had a Ripley's Believe It or Not show.
Oh, that, yeah. Barely. That was like a 90s thing.
Might have been early 2000s.
Or whatever.
Shit.
I don't know.
Remember when that brand in general was really big?
Yeah.
Like, it seemed like a long time ago now.
Ripley's in general.
Yeah. Yeah, 2000s when it started.
Yeah.
4 seasons, 88 episodes. Crank that out.
It's almost as much as this show.
Yeah.
It's none of my business.
But
That's not what I'm talking about. Don't waste your youth on
he knows.
This has been your.
He just like knows everything.
Yeah.
Like he slinks around and. Could you press the button? Because I can't reach over there.
No,
Apparently,
I can't do it.
I'm holding my hat in this hand. The other hand, I've.
Don't you like? She's become the elevator operator, though. It's literally also what's going on.
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
in
the white woman elevator white woman.
It's actually a clever way to wrap up that for her in this episode.
He doesn't want a cigarette. What
Wow,
happened to him?
first time for everything.
Because of the coronary. Oh, by the way, pillow talk. Pillow talk.
Dang, he's just laying everything out tonight.
Camptown girls, won't you come out tonight? Here he is with his wife. It's funny because you think, what? And then it actually shows that
Yeah.
later in the show. You're like, yeah, that's about right.
The horseshoe. Sorry.
Like his dad wasn't sorry, too.
Yeah, he was daggum.
He's probably worse than the other one was.
Yeah. Uncle Mac.
Go pedal that S somewhere.
Yeah.
Go pedal that out on the street. Anyway,
Wow.
Bill Rowe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a good episode. I felt like that was... It was one of those episodes that just needed to happen to move the plot along, too, as far as, like, you know. And
had some good laughs.
Yeah. But a good one.
Yeah. That all happened in one day.
Pretty much.
That's
it seems
what I was
like
thinking.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the most
Well,
part.
all right. Let's get to our awards for the episode. First one is Lucky Strike Championship for who won the episode. I'll let you go first on this one.
It's toasted.
There's no big clear winners to me. I know who the loser is for sure.
Okay.
Winners. You know, the thing is, I'm going to talk through my feelings on this because I'm not entirely sure.
I have one.
Dawn, for the most of the first part of the episode, does good. He avoids adultery, but then he concludes it on a note of adultery. So it can't be him. This is one of those things. I think this is more about like really great. Actually, this is what I'm going to go with. Really great performance and like, you know, it's like less so that her arc is a quote unquote successful one. But I'm going to go with Joan on this one.
Well, that's mine too. So
because again, it's not that. I mean, obviously Christine Hendricks, a great actress on this show, and I think the whole arc of Joan trying to be something else, you know, as far as like, I'm not going to be defined by men in the way that I see this fictional portrayal of a woman in this workplace be. And when she's presented with an alternative of that, of obviously a friend of hers hitting on her and wanting a relationship with her, she's very much heterosexual, so she's like, no thanks, I don't want anything to do with that. And then that note of the ending, which I'd never really thought of before until just watching it now, of like, no, you are the white woman elevator operator in this moment, like Shirley MacLaine was. So we'll go with Joan on this one.
Okay.
Here.
I co-sign all that. I think this is the episode where she truly became her own character. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of slowly happening anyway, but I think her willingness to not play his game and then kind of feel guilty about that after he has a heart attack and, like I said, the elevator operator thing seems like a lessening quote for her, but I think it only sort of confirms what she already felt, which is, this is kind of a waste of time. Like,
I think it's a good way to put it on your part as far as, because I think you can tell these earlier episodes where it's like, she's kind of an introductory character to introduce Peggy to the office. by this point, you can tell the show's like, no, actually, we're going to make Joan a full-fledged character in this narrative. So I think that's a good point. So, Joan sweeps for today.
By the way, do we need to call her Joan Holloway or Joan Harris? Because she'll be Holloway eventually. I guess it doesn't really matter, but
I think we should stick with Holloway because that's her maiden name,
show.
And obviously the marriage is not going to.
Oh, that's her name right now.
Harris,
right. Joan Holloway is her name now.
Yeah,
not Harris. Yeah. Then never mind. Then yes, for some reason I had forgot which one was her actual name because of the H. But yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway. So, yeah, that's her Lucky Strike Championship. Both of them go to Joan. That's her first time winning, by the way, and she won twice.
Oh, is it? Okay.
For that. Now, she did the Secor Laxative. She's won a couple of those.
Okay.
I think. She's won one of those, and she's won 2 of these. So, overall, she'll be a winner.
Yeah, her maiden name, by the way, was Holloway, and then she
Okay, I was making sure about that. I couldn't remember. Yeah. All right, so Secor Laxative Award for who lost the episode. Who are you going with this one?
They do. Every commercial block on air in the land of Lincoln is clogged up with laxative buys.
I mean, gotta be Roger Sterling.
Yeah.
I mean, he's how many has he lost already this season?
He has lost 1, 2, 2.
And this is the second.
And then he's going to then he's going to do it again.
Obviously just like, from the jump, first scene he's in, and this is not uncommon at all, walks into meeting late, and from the jump, like, he's just lost, I feel like, in this episode. Because, I think, too, he is being presented as a cautionary tale for Don in terms of, do you want to end up like this guy?
Yeah.
And this show does a great job of kind of creating those kind of legacies of examples, like, Don's looking at Roger, Pete's looking at Don, in terms of they're always like, am I going to be that person, or do I want to be that person? And so Roger just obviously takes the loss on this one. I feel like it's kind of an obvious choice.
And I agree with all that. I think he just comes out looking really bad because then he tries to play the whole, I don't know, game about his own mortality, and it's like, sorry, Charlie, this ain't working. Like, I ain't buying it. Like, and it's in a pathetic way, too. And I think he genuinely does feel that way, but it's also like, I don't know. This kind of should have been there already.
Yeah.
So, Roger Sterling, big loser. He lost for us both times, both of us in Red in the Face also, so
that's when he threw up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's
so anytime he has medical situations, it's just like not good for him.
All right, so, loses all the way. So, Joan wins, Roger loses for both of us. All right, Mohawk Airlines plaque for the most shocking event, line of dialogue, et cetera, in the episode.
I'm sorry, am I bothering you? What's going on? I just got off the phone with my brother. It's the strangest thing. Apparently my father was on that plane. What?
I'm going to say Joan's old roommate hitting on her and kind of making a queer overture towards her.
Yeah.
Just because, again, the show's going to have other, moments or elements, not necessarily as much with Joan, but with other characters with queerness in the show. And I think, like, we already saw, like, kind of a male version of this already with Sal and the Belger guy. But I think, like, this and, obviously we also get to countervailing examples because we know that, like, already Sal is gay. You know what I mean? Like, and that he's suppressing that. And with Joan, it's like, no, I'm not. That's just not what I'm interested in. And so I think that creeping into this episode that has a lot of natural heteronormative kind of aspects to it that all, by the way, everybody's gone away. Like, everybody's kind of letting, trying to play or be this alternative version of themselves, and for her roommate being that with her is, more of a queer character. I just think that's a little bit, not shocking in a big way, but just like kind of complicates the world a little bit, so to speak, as far as that goes. So I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, there was a certain, I think that's a good one. I think there was a certain line of dialogue. I think I know what it is, but I'm looking just to be sure. Is the whole story about Roger tells about the dog. The dog.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna just say we don't even have a dog.
Oh right, yeah.
Both as it's just funny, and also that it's like that's what you're using as a gaslighting technique here. Like I don't know, it's just very strange. So,
yeah.
We don't even have a dog. So for you, the Mohawk Airlines plaque goes to Carol is queer? ?
Yeah.
And we don't even have a dog for me.
Right.
All right. So Patchy Palm for cultural reference of the episode. I'll let you go first because we know what mine is.
This is Patchy.
Excuse me.
I'm just going to say the general juxtaposition of the apartment with the events of this episode. And again, I don't even know if I'd totally ever registered it before. And this is what's so great about rewatching the show is seeing, Joan buck up against what she saw in that movie, and then it conclude with her literally living up to what the movie was, making the reality. So
yeah.
I just think that this is a really great version of the show kind of poaching certain pop cultural signifiers of the era and kind of taking them and evolving them and commenting on them. I just think that's a really great use of that in the show. So I'm just going to say kind of the use of the apartment as a kind of a plot device almost.
Yeah. Yeah, mine is Eisenhower's Nixon comment, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm making a big deal about this. Literally, how could you even say something like that as a politician about your vice president who's running for president? Like, that is literally like public castration. That is so destructive. And to the point where I'm honestly laughing about it. I'm not mad. I just think I can't believe it. I think it's so unbelievable. And I think about it a random amount. Because it seems to me like Eisenhower, in a lot of ways, was so done with the presidency at that point.
That and him and Nixon never were very close either, and so he was just kind of like, well, whatever. Like that's up for you to figure out and decide.
Yeah. And
part of the reason because originally he was maybe going to get left off from being the VP, but then Nixon famously gave the Checker speech, which kind of made it a class back in '52. Made it this whole class thing, like, well, me and my wife, we're just kind of slumming it to go into politics, and made him appeal to more working class voters at the time. So Eisenhower always kind of resented Nixon being around or whatever. So it makes sense that he kind of throw him under the bus like that. But and I like that one too. I wanted to just for me represent the apartmentness of the episode. So yeah. All right, so that does it for this episode. Next up, we have Indian Summer, which is, of course, episode 11.
Literally like Mad Men episode moment.
Peggy is given the opportunity to write copy for a new weight loss device that everyone knows is useless. She finds an interesting use for it, however, which we'll see. Afraid of losing Lucky Strike cigarette account, Burt Cooper gets Roger Sterling to come in for a 1-hour meeting, but he has another attack. Don Draper becomes a partner, takes over for his friend Roger, and that's questionable use of that word at this time. But some of the admin are sharpening their resumes nonetheless.
Wait, Don becomes a partner in this episode?
This next one, it says. I think that's to solidify after Roger's having all these problems. Pete Campbell wants a promotion, but Draper doesn't seem too interested. Pete sneaks into Don's office and takes home a parcel sent by Adam addressed to Don that the mailroom boy comes to deliver.
Yeah, because obviously this is the episode where he commits suicide at the beginning. Adam does. And then, he gets the package that has all the pictures in it. And I
feel like, especially with that, is ramping up for the last final 2 episodes, the stretch of plot that it's going to have between Pete and Don, is kind of upping the ante with that. So, any final thoughts before we close this episode?
No, I think this actually is an alright enough episode. I mean, like we've said, it's kind of running in circles to try to get to where it needs to. But I do feel that the ending where he's talking to Rachel is hinting at those things that are coming up. So.
That's also the first time we've seen him admit that really to somebody out loud that's not... I mean, because, other than that, Adam was kind of... obviously somebody who knew his past, but this is him kind of talking about it with someone who could it very well use that information to damage him. Of course she doesn't, but still, like, that was, that's what's at stake. So,
well, that eventually becomes the best kept secret, or like the most open secret in the business is, wait a minute, there's this stuff going on with Don that nobody
because
really knows
literally
about,
the next episode, Pete gets clued in,
right, and then Cooper hears about it.
And then eventually Peggy's like, and, kind of knows things about it. So,
and then even some people in the Hershey pitch, that's kind of a version of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and what's interesting is that we'll talk about this later, how Pete doesn't really seem to use that totally as like as a card to play so much as just knowledge that he has about that, because you have later where he kind of has to call his friend at the Air Force, who's like in the intelligence community, to say, hey, kind of look up, just kind of skip over Don Draper's name, like, that's like season 4.
Well, I think it's like a whole thing, like they have to cancel a possible contract that they were going to, like, contracting work they were going to do for the government, and that's like costly for the agency.
That's why Roger gets mad at him, is because he was covering for Don and says you effed up. Yeah. That's actually a pretty big thing of Pete to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big deal.
Well, and then
from that point on, they're a little on better terms officially, because Don knows, he did that for me.
Yeah.
Like,
And it is one of those things too. Like, I think implicitly, and this is never said out loud, and this is what's so great about the show, but implicitly, like, Pete's like, well, and isn't there like some later reference, like, there was a reference to like, there's Pete Campbell's at every agency. We've already seen that. I feel like there's a reference later on that Pete's having with somebody else about there's kind of like Don Draper's at every agency, where there's just stuff you find out and you can't expose because it leads to these problems. And so they basically both come to terms with, well, we're just going to have to work together because we both have these connections or like reasons why we have to stay. And so it's, very eerily prophetically, and that we'll cover this later when he's like, Don, fire him if you want, but I'd keep an eye on him. One never knows how loyalty is born, ... And then even Don's like, what are you talking about? And then we see how that plays out.
And we'll see how it happens, but it is interesting that, like, obviously Pete goes up the ranks by then, and he's in a way better place by season 4, and especially season 5 by then. Technically, he's in a good place. But also, he totally loses.
He's both the big picture winner and loser of season 5.
Yeah, because that's so complex. That's kind of his season in a lot of ways. But that, like, he doesn't really have immediately much to gain from helping Don out in that situation by saying, yeah, sorry, we lost the account because, and it's like, you literally lost this big thing. Just so he
that's
can
in the middle
Don,
of all their desperation of trying to get clients in anyway.
Because that's when they're like on the ground floor again of trying to figure things out. Yeah, so that's a pretty big deal. Like, he doesn't really have a whole lot to... I know there's reasoning in the moment when it happens, but like it's kind of questionable, honestly, that it's like, you're really going to just do that for him? I don't know, is it? But yeah. So anyway, that's a ways off. The next episode, he'll be thinking of all the ways he can screw him. So.
Yeah.
And, he took to heart.
This is Kyle.
This is Levi.
Take care. God bless.
For the past 8 years, Henry Cabot Lodge has been our ambassador to the United Nations.
It is the United States of America which helped Cuba get its independence. It is the United States.
The Soviet Union has got design on the American hemisphere.
We learned that Budapest is at this moment surrounded by 1,000 Soviet tanks, which are firing.
Китайской Народной Республики в ООН место до сих пор занимает представитель, изгнанный из пределов Китая.
I might add that in recent years, the United States has found well over 100 clandestine listening devices.
In President Eisenhower's cabinet in the United Nations, Mr. Lodge faced the battles of the Cold War. There is no substitute for this kind of experience. When you vote on November 8th, vote for Richard Nixon and Henry Cabot Lodge. They understand what peace demands.
And that concludes our broadcast day.
You best be sleeping.